I'm Cecelia Tichi, and I'm here to talk about my Gilded Age mystery novels. I, for a long time, have taught at Vanderbilt University and specializing in American literature in the Gilded Age, most recently, because we are in a new Gilded Age. The phrase came from Mark Twain. He co-authored a novel titled The Gilded Age in 1873. It's not all that good a novel, but the title stuck. And what does it mean? That there's shiny gold in the surface and that there might be something baser underneath. And thus the mystery. What's underneath all the shiny surfaces? Back then in the first Gilded Age, we had a super rich elite, and they wintered in New York and Chicago and San Francisco and elsewhere, but mainly New York, Gotham, and they summered, using summer as a verb, in Newport, that little island off Rhode Island, a Quidnick Isle, where Native Americans, centuries ago, lived, and where they still are remembered. And so, Newport in the summer, or perhaps Maine, Bar Harbor, or up the Hudson Valley. But seasons and a migration, so that the elite really kind of were nomads at that time. I became interested, of all things, in the development of a new invention in the Gilded Age, cocktails. We don't think of these mixed drinks as inventions, but in fact, just as Thomas Edison was working with electricity and we soon had the Wright brothers flying, there were mixologists, especially a man named Jerry Thomas, and I'm going to show you a book, Gilded Age Cocktails, a sort of social history of this new invention. And along with that came to my thoughts a young man, old New Yorker, his name Roderick DeVere. And in boyhood, he visited the P.T. Barnum Museum in New York. But he came bored with what Barnum showed, the mummies and the odd, quirky objects. And he went down the alley, down the block, to a bar where a bartender was mixing drinks with fresh fruit and liquor and lots of clear ice. And people were sipping and savoring and enjoying. And Roderick became interested in these drinks. His parents made a big mistake. They thought their son was becoming addicted to alcohol, and they were advised to take him west to dry out. They completely misunderstood. This is the character, my character, Roderick DeVere. And he goes west with his parents, Rufus and Eleanor, and they go to Virginia City, Nevada, and there they meet the Mackles, father and daughter, Patrick Mackle, a Silver King, and his daughter Valentine, who had grown up in the Colorado mining camps until Papa struck it very rich. So, here is the novel, A Gilded Death, the first of the Val and Roddy Gilded series. And I want to start at the beginning and read this beginning. What must a novel do for us as it starts? It's got to draw us in. What's going on? Where is somebody and why? Newport, 1898. The air was sharp and I drew my cloak tighter around my shoulders and peered down at the Newport harbor. The jutting crags and rocks framed the waters below, where two clumsy ferries rounded the breakwater at the lighthouse and mixed with the sailboats and yachts. The Narragansett Bay glittered in the distance, and farther still, the ocean. I could see the naval station and the walls of old Fort Adams gray as a prison. I was not here to sightsee. I had agreed to meet my friend Cassie at the edge of this granite cliff. So far, no sign of her. The weather was clear, but a bad feeling hung in the air. Cassie was overdue. Her footman came to me this morning, breathless, with a note begging me to meet her here in this remote spot at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Urgent, about Auntie's death, she wrote. My friend's cursive writing was crabbed and splotched, her note dashed off in haste. This summer Newport season depressed her, for the sudden death of her great-aunt last winter had plunged Cassie into mourning in lead grays of body and mind. Would I meet her? I instantly replied, yes. It was now 3:30, no sign of her. I glanced sideways at the gravel roadway, still no carriage. See the flag, ma'am, see it. See the burgee. My driver, Nolan, tried to be helpful. That's Mr. J.P. Morgan's Corsair yacht in the harbor, the Greyhound of the Sea. Near as fast as the Cunard liners. The red burgee flag with the crescent and crosses. Burgee. It was a flag, yes, and for me, another word to translate, like regatta, which meant a race. This was my third summer in Newport, and still it felt like another country. In my mind, open water meant lakes or rivers, and boats for prospectors in the Humboldt or Colorado rivers. I understood canyons, arroyos, sagebrush, and rocky plunging rapids. The white clouds of a sail were still novel, even foreign. A gust blew and I tugged the lightweight wool cloak that Cassie had insisted I buy because Newport air could be chilly and a fashionable cloak could help quiet gossip about me as society's Wild West Annie Oakley, who had snagged a New York gentleman. In this so-called Gilded Age, a snob had insisted that Newport was, quote, the place to take root in. The social taproot was my husband, whose family had summered here for years. To me, summer was a season, not a verb, which said a good deal about my place in the Newport root system. Nolan, would you take me back? Madam, a good idea. And if you'd step back, please, you're a little close. The rocks can loosen, and there's no surviving a fall here. Oh, thank you, I retreated. Was it proper to say that heights both frightened and called me close like the Colorado Rockies of my childhood? Was it a breach of etiquette to confide such thoughts to my coachman? Cassie was never uncertain about matters of etiquette. She did not dramatize in person or in writing. What was so urgent about her late auntie that we must meet on this granite outcropping? Cassie, Cassandra, Van, Schuyler, Fox, Forster, Mrs. Dudley F. would not summon me here on a whim. Why wasn't she here? She and I were to be guests at a formal dinner this evening, though any chance at a one-to-one confab in that scene would face long odds. I was worried. A sudden sharp gust of wind blew in, colder than before, and my coachman said, "A front's coming in, ma'am. We don't get them often, but best get out of this weather." My little Cartier watch said 4 p.m., and I drew my cloak tight and stepped onward to the carriage. Nolan held the reins, and I stroked the mare's neck, but her warmth gave no comfort. Home, Nolan, if you please. Well, there was the dinner. They went to the dinner, the two friends eyeing one another. And finally it came time to end. And Cassie murmured, meet tomorrow at the country club, 2 p.m., don't be late. It's about Auntie. She didn't die of a stroke. She was poisoned at Mrs. Astor's annual dinner last winter. She was murdered. The word Val, is that she was murdered, and I am so afraid. Help me. So there will be help tomorrow at the golf club. But meantime, a reader needs to know in this novel, how did Roddy and Val meet and fall in love? Roddy's father, Rufus, it turns out, had lost his fortune from terrible investments on Wall Street, and needing to recover quickly, he got silver fever while his son and wife were in the Arizona desert so that their son Roddy could dry out. And they hastened to Virginia City, and 6,000 feet above sea level, winded, they went to the Silver Dollar Saloon and Bar to have dinner, and there were Val and her papa, Patrick Mackle, a Silver King, who now had more millions than he ever knew what to do with, and his only daughter would inherit all his fortune. But meantime, here are Val and Roddy making acquaintance. They are in the Silver Dollar dining room. Roddy and I met in the Silver Queen Hotel dining room where Papa and I often dined. When the DeVeres came for their evening meal, conversation drifted from their table to ours. Papa swore to Rufus that all the nearby mines were utterly played out, not one a worthwhile investment. But Roddy and I began our own conversation. In the lingo of the mines, I spoke of shafts. Roddy rejoined with rides in a landau in Central Park and bathing at Bailey's Beach in Newport. Neither of us knew what the other was talking about, but vocabulary mattered not a whit, for our eyes told one another everything. I could not take my eyes off him. To me, he looked like a Greek god, the ones I had seen in picture books, his broad shoulders, deep blue eyes, and the wavy brown hair that dipped over his forehead. I nearly swooned. He pointed to the bar at the other end of the dining room. Jerry Thomas used to tend bar here, he said. Who? The famous bartender, inventor of the blue blazer. Would you like to see a trick? Before I could answer, the young man sped to the bar, had a word with the bartender, and beckoned me and my papa. His parents sat stock still as we watched Roddy take hold of 2 silver mugs and pour whiskey into one, water and sugar into the other. With the bartender's help, one mug was set afire, and Roddy DeVere held the entire dining room wrapped as he poured blazing whiskey back and forth from one mug to the other, streaming blue flames that drew oohs and ahs from onlooking diners. Applause broke out. Roddy bowed. My tribute to Professor Jerry Thomas, he said. I decided to record the amazing drink in my diary, and Roddy recited the ingredients and directions that I took down in a notebook that was to become a journal in the years to come. Let me show it to you, because Roddy DeVere is a master mixologist. What Val will learn as they marry is that he is a secret consultant to railroads and resorts and hotels and even ocean liners. He will concoct special cocktails, but only incognito, because Roderick DeVere has been to law school, a specialty in criminal law, and he now defends all of these resorts and public watering holes, oases, against the temperance crowd who are determined to end alcoholic drinks in America and bring on prohibition. Roddy's Yin and Yang is a life of mixing and inventing cocktails, and the mystery novels will be interspersed with Roddy's recipes, just as I, of course, included the recipes in my Gilded Age cocktail book. So it's a sort of twofer, a cocktail book and the recipes, some of them, in the mystery novels. The question will be, in this one, how did Cassie's great aunt die? If she was poisoned, who poisoned her? Her heir of a great fortune is Cassandra, Val's friend Cassie. Who will think that Cassie might next be poisoned, and why? And what will Val and Roddy do to sleuth out the killer, because a poisoner is stalking society? Then, the summer of 1898 in Newport, and that is the mystery. I hope you will join me and enjoy this mystery. It will be available to you at Amazon or in a bookstore, Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, wherever you get your books. A Gilded Death will be yours. Thank you for being with me today.